In this video, we're going to go through the best perks we use with Rick in Multiversus. You can see here we are in the main menu. From the main menu, I'm going to select Collection. Then I'm going to select Rick, and that will open up the Train Perks menu. You will have this menu available once you've leveled up your Rick to a specific level, and that will be level 9. So you will need to use your Rick in order to have this available in your Multiversus for your Rick build. You can then go through the lower level perks, select 3 lower perks and 1 signature perk. Before we get into those perks, let's show you the move list because it's going to be really important when you're selecting these perks here. There are 2 knockback moves that I really like with Rick, and I think it can really come in handy, especially when you're knocking back enemies horizontally. There is number 1. After you use Portal Theory, so Portal Theory, basically Rick shoots 2 portals maximum, and then once he's used these portals or the portal has then timed out, you then have another secondary ability when you press your side special to use rocket skis. Now when you're using these rocket skis, it can shoot you forwards out of a predicament as opposed to those portals. And if it knocks into an enemy, it does have a strong knockback horizontally. So using this can greatly knock back those enemies horizontally. Let's keep that in mind. There is also another one that I like to use, which is Personal Space. Rick charges a blast from his belt, which is a force field. Now this force field is absolutely brilliant because it has a 360 radius around Rick. So if you're jumping into an enemy and then you're using the side special, it can really knock back a player horizontally. There are also other moves that you can use to knock back an enemy. For example, the fart bomb. He drops a fart bomb on the ground in front of him. It is in close proximity though, so you do need to get within distance of your enemy to use this, and think about that distance to use that fart bomb. It does knock players upwards, but it doesn't have as much of a knockback as those moves that we've just covered there. And then of course you also have those attacks that have a hit stun. For example, You Like Augments. Now Rick's combo, the You Like Augments, is great and it ends in a rocket if you finish the combo. How you do this is you hold forward and you press X. Doing this is great, and then there is also the Trigger Happy, which are your lasers. The lasers aren't very powerful until you charge them. You will need to charge your laser in order for it to have any significant knockback, and it really isn't a significant knockback compared to those other moves that we've just mentioned. The Me Sinks and Destroy is slightly difficult to use, and it does require a little bit of time for you to consider what you're doing here. That is for those skilled players. Now that we've gone through the main moves that you will be using with Rick, let's get into those perks now and select the best perks to use with Rick in Multiversus. Starting with the lower level perks. Hold on, we need to go into Train Perks. Starting with the lower level perks, let's explain what we have here. We have an offense section. These are your perks that are available for your offense. Then you have the defense, of course, on the tin. These are your defensive perks. And then you have your utility. These are normally to do with movement or to enhance anything to do with the mobility of your player. For example, being able to dodge. Let's start with offense and let's select the best perks to use with Rick in the offense section. Now there are 2 that I really like to use. As we've just considered, there are the hit stuns and there is the knockback. Now we've just mentioned that knockback is horizontal, and the perk that I would use for that reason is definitely going to be the percussive punch power. Your team deals 5% increased damage with attacks that knock back enemies horizontally. 10% increased damage if your ally also selects his perk. Because this is quite a common perk, it's definitely going to be one that's going to be great to use. But let's say you've got a Shaggy on your team and it's a lower level Shaggy. A lot of players like to use Shaggy. You can then consider something like the Lumpy Space Punch. Your team deals 5% increased damage with melee attacks in the air. The reason why I say this is because when you're using that belt attack that I've just spoken about, that force field, you can use this in the air, so that is where that can come in handy. It is a secondary, I wouldn't say it's the best one to use. And then of course, if you're a laser person, you love your lasers, there are things that you can do to increase the damage that you're using with your lasers. For example, the Make It Rain Dog will speed it up, but you don't want to be using that. You want to be using the Dead Shot. Your team deals 5% increased damage with projectiles. Because your lasers are quite weak until you charge them, this could be a way that you could add extra damage to those lasers. And then of course the 2 that I would select, the best perks in the offense section, as I've just mentioned, Painted Target, because you've got a combo that is absolutely brilliant, especially if you finish it with that rocket. And then you have the percussive punch power. Those are the 2 best perks to use in the offense section here. You could consider adding additional damage to your up and a slight upwards knockbacks if you're using that fart bomb, but it is slightly harder to hit than these other perks and other moves I've just mentioned here. That's give you some good insight into Rick. Let's get into defense now. Now, as I've mentioned before in my other perks videos, I think that the defense perks are a lot to be inspired. I think they should add more defense perks. Maybe the developers are working towards it. Maybe it's something the community could speak about. This is going to go against your play style. So, if you're with a teammate that likes to stick to you like glue, and this does happen quite a lot, then I would select the back-to-back. This is if you have a teammate on your team that does that, but you don't have a chance in the second round to really select those perks really to make that difference. You would just kind of be like, yeah, I want to go out there and I want to do my best. So keep that in mind if you're going to select that back-to-back. It does fill up a slot. You can only select 3 perks at one time. The one that I would select as the best perk to use with Rick is going to be the Clear the Air. Here's why. Batman is a common player that you are going to encounter in Multiversus as of late, and I've noticed this when I've came back to the game and tried a few things out. Batman has a projectile, his Batarang, and his Batarang does flow back towards him. So if you're in the way of the Batarang while it's coming back towards Batman, it will then be able to hit you. If you're using Clear the Air and you've dodged that Batarang, it destroys the Batarang, it can no longer hit you in the air. So when you're in a predicament, let's say for example you've used your portal off the edge of the platform and then Batman throws his Batarang, this could be where destroying that projectile is definitely going to be great. Next, get into the utility, because we've gone through the defense now. I think it's really based on your play style, and Kryptonian Skin is definitely the easiest defense perk if you're stuck for choice here. Let's get into utility. So with utility, I'm not going to say that CoffeeZilla is the best one to use, but it's definitely something that you can consider. The reason why CoffeeZilla is one that you can consider is because it's the go-to perk in the utility. What CoffeeZilla does is it gives your team 10% reduced ability cooldown duration. So if you're using other abilities that Rick uses, then use the CoffeeZilla. This could be great. I'm not going to select it as the best perk, and you're going to understand why. Stick to the end of the video to understand why, because I'm layering it up with the signature perk that we're going to select. You also have gravity manipulation. Gravity manipulation is absolutely brilliant, because if you're using your portals quite often, let's say you're using CoffeeZilla, if you're using your portals quite often and you want to use it to get out of a predicament, then I would say gravity manipulation is going to help you, so that if an enemy, an assassin player build, is underneath you and you're about to get smashed out of the arena, then I would say gravity manipulation is going to help you out, because you can maneuver yourself back down to the platform, so you can refresh all of the moves that you can do in the air, and you can be out of a vulnerable situation. This can also help you avoid Superman's punch, because you can use rocket boots if you're in the right position on top of Superman, or you can avoid him to the left or the right if you're using that gravity manipulation slightly easier. So gravity manipulation is definitely going to be one of the best perks to use with your Rick build. Of course, if you're getting knocked all over the place, then you can kind of consider something to do with your increased base knockback influence, for example that Tasmanian trigonometry. Now that we've gone through the best perks to use in the lower level section, let's get into that signature perk, and I'm going to show you the best perk to use with your Rick build when you're following along with what I'm teaching you here. Hopefully I pronounced this correctly. The Squanching Pyrotechnics. Rick's portal has a longer cooldown, but allies that pass through the portal ignite enemies with their next melee attack. Allied projectiles that pass through the portal will also ignite enemies. Enemies that pass through the portal are ignited. So if you're using a lot of portals, although this could be great for you to get out of a situation, there is another use for these portals when you're using this perk here. Let's get into the next one before we select the best perk here. You have Hephaestus Who. Now I think I've pronounced that correctly. Hephaestus, when Rick fully charges his whip attack, the final hit spikes an enemy downwards towards Rick. Now this whip attack actually has a slight knockback influence upwards. It can knock your enemies upwards if you're using it correctly, slightly keep them in the air, so you can then use another combo attack in the air or another attack in the air if you're quick enough. That is where that whip move can be extremely helpful. So if you're using that in that way, I would say don't select this perk, because you want to use that whip in the air and keep them in the air with that slight knockback, sort of keeping them in the air for a moment with that whip so you can do another attack on them, and that's what that does when you don't select this perk. Now into the next one, slightly harder to use. Bit of a stickler, me seeks. These perks are really hard to pronounce. Rick's Meeseeks deals double damage to fighters that are already in hit stun. Now Meeseeks is hard to summon. If you're a new or lower level Rick player, I would say this is not going to be the best perk for you to use in the signature perk section. The one that I would select 100% the best perk to use with Rick in the signature perks is going to be the Squanching Pyrotechnics. Here's why. When you've used your portal and it has a longer cooldown, you can then use your rocket skis, and that has an extremely powerful knockback horizontally. So when you're using the perks that we've just selected in the lower level section, this is definitely going to be the next perk to layer that up so you have an extremely powerful horizontal knockback Rick. There are other different types of knockback you can do when those damage numbers go higher, but when you want that easier knockback to send them flying off the arena horizontally, this is going to be the perk for you to select with your Rick. Now that we've gone through those perks, let's get into the match now and let's show you how this is done. Very proud of myself in the way that I've done that. Hopefully it's been extremely helpful for you. Let's show you how this is done in a team game. Let's go. Rick does not have any voice lines for an announcer pack, so that's the reason why I don't have him selected right there. Let's select those perks to get ready. So of course we're going to use the Squanching Pyrotechnics. Then from there we're going to use that horizontal knockback, which is going to be percussive punch power. We're not going to use Coffeezilla, but we're definitely going to use that gravity manipulation so we can avoid those attacks in the air. And then of course you can mix and match between the hit painted target and that clear the air. Now clear the air, as I said, it's going to destroy those projectiles when you're in the air. If you're up against a player that, for example, Batman, this is going to be extremely helpful. And then of course if you have painted target, you can use this instead. Now if you're not up against a Batman, use painted target so you have that hit stun when you're using that combo. Let's go.
Let's get sloppy.
Just about to matchmake now. Let's see if we make the match. Woo! Right, so we're not up against a Batman. There is a projectile that is thrown, but it doesn't come back to us, so there's no need to clear the air because there'll be nothing else in the air after you've dodged that enemy projectile. Also, Shaggy's sandwich is also not a boomerang type of weapon, so it won't come back to him. So that's the reason why painted target's definitely going to be the next one there. So we've definitely got a good perk build right there. We have a Tom and Jerry on the team, up against Bugs Bunny and Shaggy. Best perk to use with Rick. Let's show you how this is done. Horizontal knockback and hit stun is what we're going to take advantage of, and that gravity manipulation to get back down to the arena when Shaggy's trying to knock us out with that up special. And of course Bugs Bunny has multiple ways he can do. He can do with his bat. Rockets, quite a lot. Actually, he's a mage. Get him. Ooh, we're on the right level as well. Let's go. There's that belt force field. There it is. Lasers aren't going to provide any additional. A rocket on the end of the combo there. Don't stand in one place. I'm going to charge that portal for a second. Second portal. Now I can use my rocket skis. It can also get you out of a predicament as well because it does move you. Now all of our knock upwards are going to be independent at the moment. They haven't got any perks attached to them. Done that purposely so we can use those rocket skis. And as you can see, when those damage numbers are high, those up specials are going to knock them back flying anyway. Force field belt right there. Hit stun. So that Bugs Bunny was stuck there. Let's get those rocket skis out. Ooh. Missed him there. These two are going out now anyway. Let's go, Tom. Portal out here. So I have to watch it because those rocket skis can also get you into a bit of a predicament. Focus her. We got me sinks. Fart bomb. Oh, what happened there? Force field move. If somebody goes into that move that I just done there, they would have turned into a... Hold on. Blue points coming.
Me seeks to destroy you.
It's over. First round's to us. What I was about to say was, if they go into that sort of ball that I launched, they will turn into a... What's that called? That cat called? The dog called? Rain Dog. It's one of my favourite characters as well. Right, so it looks like a player hasn't wanted to continue after that. Don't blame them. 343 damage there by using those perks. I'm also going to toast every player that's here to be a good sport. Just let them know that it was a good game. Keep them motivated so they want to play again. That's what we want, a welcoming gaming environment. So there we have it, guys. Those are the best perks to use with Rick in Multiversus, in my opinion. Let me know what perks you're using with your Rick build in Multiversus. This has been a video right here by Anthony Allen. Don't forget there is more right here on the Anthony Allen YouTube channel. I have a Multiversus playlist for you to check out. Check that out, and I'll see you in the next one. And remember, you are awesome. Thank you for watching.